My name is John Mollison. I interview old guys, I draw their airplanes, and I'm part of the production team of Old Guys and Their Airplanes. This year, we had a great slate of films and educational kits to bring to the world. And then COVID-19 happened. Well, it set us back, but we were able to get together and think about the opportunities we had. And one of those opportunities was with technology. And it actually turned out to be even better. Because when we go out and meet wonderful people of American history, many people say, I wish I could be in the room with you. Well, using this technology, now we can. This is called an Old Guys and Their Airplanes debrief. It's a live interview, and there's also an opportunity for you to interact and ask questions. On the screen, you'll see a number that comes up, and you can text your questions to our control booth, and they'll get them to me in this earpiece. And I can tell you already that questions are coming in. So if you see me interrupt our guest, recognize that we're just trying to make sure that everybody has a chance to meet this wonderful guest. And this wonderful guest is truly wonderful. Let me give you a little background. He grew up in the Great Depression. He was a part of a single-parent family. He experienced racial segregation. And then he went to war as part of the famed Tuskegee Airmen. And then he went to war again in the Korean War and war again in the Vietnam War, accumulating an astounding 408 combat missions. But it doesn't end there. After his military service, he continued to be a role model to many through Boy Scouts. And just recently, he was awarded the highest honor we can give a civilian, the Congressional Gold Medal. On behalf of Old Guys and Their Airplanes, the Distinguished Flying Cross Society, and South Dakota Public Broadcasting, I'd like to introduce to you Brigadier General Charles McGee. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good to be here to share with you.
Well, it is awesome to have you here. There are people all over the world. Now, I'd like to start out our interview by setting something up. Now, one of the things that we have is we have some pictures. Rick, would you show up picture number 11? Now, General McGee, can you see that picture?
Yes, I see that picture.
So tell us a little bit what's going on there. You're what, 18, 17 years old?
Yeah, I think that's about right. Certainly understandable that memories don't remain so much of the day and time for sure, but that is me, and I think I was just cooling it, if you will.
Well, that was a time, though. Was that taken in Chicago? About?
No, I think that may have been taken in Champaign, Illinois.
Okay. Well, describe growing up. Describe the Great Depression, and describe growing up without a mom, and some of the other aspects of the times.
Well, life has been a blessing, and certainly that's one of them. My dad was able to, when he moved from the Cleveland area to the Chicago area, find a family willing to take care of 3 children. And so my brother and sister and I were with the Harris family west of Chicago, which turned out to be good. It was nice to go into Chicago to the many events and museums and so on. But for schooling, there was only one black family in town, so there was no segregation. So I had good schooling all the way up through my first year of high school. Also had a chance there to join the Boy Scouts, go out. I used to be able to look at a leaf and tell you what the tree was, but don't ask me today. Time does change some things. Some things I remember, some things I don't.
Sure.
But certainly wonderful growing up years. As I say, a little, even though I didn't have a mother, we were told, treat other people like you want to be treated. And with the old saying, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words won't hurt me any. So we didn't try to get in a fight because somebody called us some names.
Well, wait, did you experience any of that growing up? I mean, you said you were the only black household in a predominantly white community. I mean, were you treated well?
We were treated extremely well, and that's why I say it's a good thing it was not in Chicago. Chicago was not the welcome place for sure. And so that's why I say the treatment was the best, because we weren't treated separately or because of skin color and happenstance of birth treated differently. And that's one of my life's blessings, to have had that opportunity. And who knows what I would have decided to do or become had it been different.
Well, you've in leading up to this, General, you and I have had a chance to have some conversations, and you've talked often about education. Do you feel like you had a good quality education growing up, or were there some deficits that you felt like you had to make up somewhere?
Well, I think those first through third grade years in Ohio, where there was segregation in the schools, certainly weren't the best, and so I was fortunate to have the opportunity to have a change in that and be able to go from third grade through first year of high school where that segregation didn't exist. And so that was to my benefit, and certainly a blessing to be treated equally, to not be downgraded at all because of my birth and that type of thing. Well, all I can say is, wow, it's hard to explain.
Okay, I've got a question coming in right now. Where did you go to college, and where did you go to college, and what were you studying?
Okay, that's interesting. As I graduated, we moved from, my dad's work took him from Chicago area to Iowa. 2.5 wonderful high school years, because there were not enough blacks for segregated school. He left Iowa and back to Chicago. In Chicago, terrible. In fact, I didn't do anything. I was in Keokuk, Iowa. Excellent schooling. In Chicago, I didn't do anything for several weeks because they were that far behind where the Iowa schools were. And that's the segregated school on the south side of Chicago.
Wow.
But upon graduation, needed to do some work and got the opportunity to share in the Civilian Conservation Corps, a year of work that focused on engineering, and also made enough money to be able to go to a state college, University of Illinois, after 1 year of work. So
you paid for your own way through college?
Well, that's pretty much the case. It was a working action.
What was your favorite topics, or your favorite courses of study?
Well, the engineering, but as I say, because I was working my way through school, your time was well used, because you had to work, you had to study, you had to get some rest, you had to meet your class schedules. So life, there were no loose moments, if you will, doing nothing. Mm-hmm. You were kept pretty busy throughout. But I was fortunate to be able to get a job, so I had food because of work there at college. Also had time to study. I also had time to enter fraternity, and then in that case, I entered the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, and to me that was a good one too, because their focus there at Champaign-Urbana at the university was quality education. In fact, the fraternity received the school's trophy for scholarship of all of the membership of the fraternity.
Now, were they segregated? Was that fraternity segregated?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Segregation existed around the university, but not that much at the university. It's rather interesting that that although the town of Champaign-Urbana was segregated, on campus was not. That doesn't mean everybody was equal opportunity, but enough that it made a pleasant journey, if you will.
Sure. Okay, so you're going to school. You're an engineering student, and then you enter this period of time when you didn't know it at the time, but you'd become famous, and that happens in World War II. You decide to become a pilot, and you join the Tuskegee Airmen project experiment. I have a question for you, and this is coming through. Why is the Tuskegee Airmen story so important to you, and why do you think it's important to the people of today?
Well, it shows what that focus and belief that you can, not letting somebody tell you can't do something, be your focus or be an excuse for not achieving. It turns out that the 1925 Army War College study determined that said they had the study. In fact, the subject was use of Negro manpower if America gets involved in another war. Paragraph 3 on the first page was factors bearing on the problem. It was a problem to somebody. You can guess who. I won't mention that right now. But first line of that said, Negro is physically qualified for service. The Negro is less intelligent than the white man. The Negro is less, any area you want to look at was downgraded, and therefore the policy was sent to Washington to say that if America got involved in another war, we could dig ditches, cook food, drive trucks, build roads, but fly and maintain an aircraft? Impossible. They claimed they had studied it. I haven't gone back, but I think you could pretty quickly finger who the policymakers were in 1925. But the Army bought that. And although the country coming out of 10 years of depression provide opportunity for all in the war buildup and the need, as I say, didn't change segregation, but did provide an opportunity. And because I was in school, my draft board wasn't pulling my number, but I heard about the aviation program because part of the Army policy was that they couldn't use a black pilot because they didn't have any black mechanics. No, segregation was part of their base.
So, let me get this straight. The black mechanics were actually the foundation of the Tuskegee Airmen program because you couldn't have pilots without the mechanics, correct?
That's very correct. And it turns out that of the now called Tuskegee Airmen, the first were mechanics expected to fail, but it entered into the training program at Chanute Field, Rantoul, Illinois, 14 miles away from the university. And that's where I heard about the program, the mechanics up at Chanute Field being trained. I think perhaps my ROTC instructor said, hey, go for a pilot, not a mechanic. Anyway, I somehow was influenced to go take the pilot exam, passed it, and got called in October, going directly into training as a cadet. I'm sure ROTC had a lot to do with that. But what,
I need to interrupt for a second here, General McGee. I mean, the questions are crazy here. But
very much.
control room, would you put up picture number 1? This is just a cool picture, and I think it tells the story pretty well here. That's you with your mechanic, correct? Your crew chief of your airplane. First of all, who is that guy? Who's your crew chief?
My crew chief was Nate Wilson, and unfortunately, we got together a short time, 40 years after the war ended, but he unfortunately passed early. He was working in the automobile industry in the Detroit area when we last had opportunity to share.
Yeah.
But Nate Wilson was my crew chief, and I had Kitten on my aircraft because it was my wife's nickname, but I said, hey, put it on both sides, and it's there also because he's keeping this engine purring like a kitten.
Okay, hey, Rick, would you put up question or picture number 11, please? Okay. Awesome. All right, there we go. So that's your bride on the right, and what's her name?
Francis.
Francis. Okay. Now, were you married when you went off to war?
Yes, indeed, and I have a story. We met on campus, and as I say, in the spring I passed the exams for pilot training. Nothing was happening. Went on school. She was a graduate, but waiting and knowing that one day the draft's going to catch up, we decided to get married in October, as I say. So months were passing, nothing happened. We got married on a Saturday in October of 42, and you'd know Monday morning's mail, report to Tuskegee.
Wow.
So I went south, but as I say, it was a blessing for me because I could focus on the training. And when we had some time off Saturday and Sunday, I didn't have to go to Atlanta or Montgomery looking for company and a girlfriend. I had my wife there with me. She worked for the doctor at the Tuskegee Institute Hospital. And so my focus was perfect.
Cool.
Concentrating on the training and keep her happy.
Now, when it comes to the training, was the training for you as part of the Tuskegee project any different than the training for the rest of the U.S. Army Air Forces?
I don't think so. Fortunately, the Southeast Training Command didn't set any special standards or so on. We were able to meet the standards, and fortunately, there were enough folks that came forth, the white instructors that we had early. There were a couple that weren't that interested in the program, but fortunately they got moved out pretty early in the training, and those that were there were just glad that we had the opportunity, and they did the most to assure that they couldn't change the circumstance, but to assure that the opportunity was successful, and it was.
So where was your first deployment when you went into World War II? Where did you go?
Well, the story for the Tuskegee Airmen varies because the first squadron, 99th Pursuit Squadron, where those first mechanics went into, was combat ready in December of 42, and that's when I first started my flying training. They were no white commander wanted them. They continued them in training for another 3 or 4 months, and finally in the spring of 44 or 43 rather, sent them to North Africa attached to a white group, but Momeyer, 33rd Fire Group, didn't want them, and that's another part of the story. So when I look at the Tuskegee experience now in the story, I really say there are 5 phases. Phase 1 is the story of the 99th and their experience, and later in the war became a part of the 332nd Fighter Group. Behind them, 3 additional single-engine fighter squadrons, the 100th, 301st, and 302nd, became the 332nd Fighter Group. I was assigned to the 302nd when I graduated, and we went directly to Italy as our first flying experience. And although we were combat ready in the P-40, Momar had told the not one in 99 said they should be patrolling Liberia. Well, where's Liberia and where were the Germans? I think you understand. But when we began our training, the 99 had moved out of Africa into Sicily, out of Sicily into Italy. 332nd at the same time went directly to Italy. And they said, oh, you are going to do some patrol work. We switched, still left States on time to the P-39 Bella Cobra. So 332nd Fighter Group was patrolling Naples Harbor and the waterways to the Anzio beachhead. 99th, moving out of Africa, Sicily into Italy. And I'd say there was a little integration then because the Colonel Bates of the 79th Fire Group was just glad to have more pilots and more aircraft to accomplish the assignments. And over the Anzio beachhead with that group, 99 shot down more than a dozen German aircraft. Okay. So it was a matter of opportunity.
Rick, if you could put up picture number 1, please. Oh, no, picture number 2, excuse me. I'm sorry about that. There we go. Yeah, now, are you seeing your P-51, General?
Yes, I do. I see number 78 was my buzz number for sure, 302nd Squadron. But that's interesting because the 332nd Fighter Group, when the 15th Air Force realized our bombers needed escort, pulled the 332nd Fighter Group with 3 other fighter groups to begin that escort work. And we gave our P-39 to the Russians, picked up P-47 Thunderbolt, but only flew it about 3 months, and then got that P-51.
So when did you decide to paint the tails red? We have a question for this.
Oh, that came about. Somebody in 15th Air Force realized that the gunners on our B-17s and B-24s needed to realize that these planes suddenly showing up are friendly, not German. And they decided of the 4 groups, one had a yellow tail, one had candy stripe, red and white, or rather orange and black, I believe. Another, so it's yellow tail, candy stripe, checkerboard, 332nd, red tails. And that was to help recognition as we were assigned to the different bomber streams on the different missions.
Okay, I got a question. We got one, and this is a question that gets to sometimes how Hollywood movies show things. When you were flying cover for a bomber stream, did you ever talk to the bombers? Did you ever interact with them, or were you simply doing your job, they're doing their job?
We were doing our job. But you know, the Hollywood movies, they put in things that help make the movie attractive to the general population and not the accuracy of the circumstance. In fact, radio silence was another important element so that the Germans didn't even often know that the aircraft were in the air.
But you got a victory. Do you remember the date that you got your aerial victory?
Late in August of 44 over Parker Beach Aerodrome. And that was our leadership under Ben Davis said we stuck with the bomber unless dispatched to fight off some German air, either Focke-Wulfs or Messerschmitts attempting to penetrate the stream we were escorting. It happened that day. My element was dispatched to fight off Focke-Wulf, and he thought he could dive away, but fortunately I was able to stay on his tail, and he made a wrong turn and put him right in my gun sights. So that's how that happened. But as I say, we stuck with the bombers, and that's why later even B.O. Davis, our leader's aircraft, renamed by request, because even though many of the bomber members didn't know that Red Tails were black pilots, they knew that we stuck with the bombers as long as we had the fuel to do it.
Did you have any idea that you were part of a history-making unit with the Red Tails?
No, I don't think so. I know many of the pilots that just got into something they had wanted as a kid, but the opportunity to serve, and as I say, the country came behind the decision to declare war and support our allies in Europe. It didn't change segregation, but it provided opportunity, and our performance allowed that to be passed on when the Air Force separated from the ground forces and determined that segregation needed to end.
So you came back from World War II and you made the decision to stay in the military. What was the reasoning behind continuing on and not leaving and starting your own life as a civilian?
It happens that something I like to pass on to young folks today is, if you determine your talents and what you do, hope you put finger something you love to do. I was hooked after my first flight. Exactly why or how, I still don't have the answer, but I loved the flying. I kept getting good assignments without asking for it, and actively flew 27 of my 30 years of service. I don't have the answer, but I can look at the record, and it was something I enjoyed doing, and that's what I like to pass on.
Sure. Okay, guys, I think we got our pictures set up now. Could you go to picture number 3? All right, now this is a picture of you in an F-51. It's a P-51 renamed for the new Air Force, the F-51. And now you're in the Korean War. And it was in this war, I think the audience should know that the Distinguished Flying Cross Society is one of the great patrons behind these debriefs. And it was in the Korean War that you were awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. What can you tell us about your Korean War service? What'd you do, and what kind of experiences come to mind?
Well, again, it was the P-51. Of course, now we have the D model bubble canopy rather than the C model. But wonderful flying, and our participation was strictly with interdiction and ground support, is the way I put it. My war experience in Europe was air superiority. Korea, interdiction and ground support. Never saw a MiG because they weren't down in the trees where we were supporting the ground forces movement on the ground. That was something. P-51 was still great. We could carry bombs. We could put rockets under the wing. We just had great opportunities that we're able to fulfill. And so it was good to be a part of the 67th Fighter Bomber Squadron.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that came about because I had gone to the Philippines and I was in base operations at the time. But when the war broke out, we didn't have jets in place to support our needs. But there were plenty of P-51s, and the group there in the Philippines had just dropped their P-51s and started flying the F-80. So they had plenty of pilots and plenty of planes, and that's how we came about. Two squadrons picking up P-51s in Japan, flying our first missions out of Japan while they built the first strip inside Busan perimeter, and then moving over and continuing to serve the war. And we even flew some missions out of Pyongyang Airport in the north. We were that close to winning the war, but they wouldn't let our leader keep the Chinese out. So we backed up, and we still have a divided Korea, but we did quite a service to assure South Korea was saved.
I have a question coming in. Did you experience any racial segregation at all in the Korean War, or by then was it passed out of the Air Force?
It's amazing that my experience, and again, I don't have the answer why me or how me. I never ran into a bit of a problem with the pilots that I flew with. I had early in my career, they had said you have to do something else other than fly. Some went to intelligence school, weather school. I went to the aircraft maintenance officer school. So besides flying, I also did material and maintenance support tasks. So when I was assigned to the squadron, I was first the squadron maintenance officer. We lost our commander early in the war, and I was the operations officer took command. I moved from maintenance to the operations officer. So those experiences, but I have not one instance of where my color affected the task and the operation and my assignments. And again, why me, how me? I don't have to answer, but all I can say, life has been a blessing.
Yes, sir. Okay, so one of the blessings that you also experienced, you moved to the Vietnam War, terribly tumultuous time for our country in the 60s for every reason, but you're flying combat in Vietnam, but you're also flying unarmed combat. What got you, now you're flying the F-4 Phantom, but you're flying an unarmed version that only has cameras on it, and you're going straight into the enemy to take pictures. What are your memories of that moment?
Well, it was good training. They decided they needed tactical intelligence, and so they started 2 new squadrons, 12th and 16th TAC Recon squadrons. We, along with our crews and mechanics, went to the school in Virginia, Mountain Home, Idaho, to get in the F-4. Went through, of course, survival training here and also in the Philippines. And then 2 of us were lieutenant colonels. I ended up being made commander of the 16th Squadron, taking it to Vietnam, and the other lieutenant colonel took the 12th Squadron to Thailand. But it was something we did day, night, all types of intelligence gathering, but had no weapons, so speed was our only defense.
All right, sir, we're getting really some great questions, but you're nearing the end of your service, and you retire and you go on and you become involved in scouting. I know you were a scout as a kid, but we're getting questions. What about scouting was so important to you?
Well, it's something, and I can still say, on my heart, I'll do my best, do my duty to God, to country, help others at all times, keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, morally straight, and then live life being trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, reverent. You got something better? I think if everybody lived by the Scout Oath and the 12 Scout Laws, we'd even have a different country today. But it was just a wonderful opportunity to learn to handle a canoe and do things. And there was a day, as I tell folks now, I could look at a leaf and tell you about the tree. Don't ask me to do that now. But there was a time that was part of life's experience. But what a wonderful way to grow up, and the challenges as a youngster, still having not decided exactly where or what I wanted to be or do.
Right. These questions are being broadcast all over, and we've got a question from a military chaplain right now, and he wants to know: did you ever interact with chaplains, and if you did, what was that interaction like? Because character and values and taking positive action on opportunities is just part of your life. So I'm curious to know if you got involved in the spiritual formation of your men or even yourself with military chaplains.
Yeah, well, I did, because it's interesting in my career. And again, I don't have the answer why me or how me, but I commanded 44th Fighter Bomber Squadron in the Philippines for 2 years. And of course, there's chaplains on base and so on. Certainly, the idea of helping others and keeping yourself strong, that approach is a part of that. And also, later on in assignment, I served in the Cold War as well. And in the time there, as a commander of a support unit, there was two parts of the group: the support and those actually involved in the Jupiter missile. We had a Catholic and a Protestant chaplain. And it's very interesting that our Protestant chaplain happened to be from the South. And he didn't get along very well. But I'll have to tell you that years after the war, after that, back at home, he had a change of heart. But I think it's the people that he was trying to serve that helped bring him about to realize that it's not color of skin or happenstance of birth that's important, but as I say, it's how you live, and that's when I can point to the Scout experience.
Okay, guys, bring up General McGee's P-51 again. It's picture number 2. The title of this print is something near and dear to you. You call it the 4 Ps. First of all, when did you develop the 4 Ps, and what are they?
Well, the 4 Ps came about in some of my recent years in talking to groups and trying to help them realize our need to motivate the youth across the country. And I'm not exactly sure how these words came to me, but it fit the message that I was trying to pass on and still do to young folks and to those mentoring young folks, because they need to have the track that they use to assure the mentoring is going in the right direction. And somewhere finally put those together. It's interesting when we look at military experience, they're often 3 Ds, determination and that type of thing, or it ends up the 4 Ps kind of hit me: perceive, prepare, perform, persevere, perceive, dream your dreams. And I like to add to for the young folks, and hope you put your finger on something you like to do. I love the flying and was fortunate to have experienced it that way in my life. But prepare, get a good education and develop the talents that you perceived, and perform, always doing your best, whatever you do with excellence as the goal. This is so meaningful to family, and I tell the youngsters, what's good for you is good for family. What's good for family is good for community. What's good for community is good for the state, and that type of thing. It goes on up the line. So these value lessons are certainly a part of that. And finally, persevere. We could have bowed our head and said they call me names, they don't like me, they don't want me, gone off and not serve our country. What would that have done? Because our experience allowed the Air Force to work with the great President Harry Truman to finally realize equal access and equal opportunity is the path for all Americans, not happenstance of birth is not the determination. So persevere. Don't let circumstances or somebody telling you can't do something be your excuse for not achieving.
Let me go on record by saying I have the utmost respect for anyone that serves their country. Let me know in the comments what branch of the military that you have served, if you did serve. If your family comes from a long line of soldiers like mine did. And once again, thank you if you have served.
So it's good. The value lessons that sustained us are good for the young folks today and what they're facing. Some cases we don't have the answer yet, but certainly the value lessons are still good to help prepare.
Guys, would you put up picture number 6? General, you've come a long way in that picture since the picture that we showed at the beginning of this interview, you as a 19-year-old, 18-year-old. That around your neck is the Congressional Gold Medal. What was going on in your head when you were awarded that?
Well, you know, it was astounding and almost beyond belief to have the president of the country salute us, saying, "I salute you for those salutes you didn't get along the way." Certainly a very proud moment, but an important moment, and again, a moment to steel us on the value lessons to pass on to young folks, that somebody telling you can't do something should be what you grab onto and realize that the opportunities to be an American citizen and serve our country don't come from folks that tell you can't do something, but it comes from your willingness to not let that be an excuse.
So, what does it mean for you to be an American?
Not an easy answer for sure. The opportunities that I have, the opportunities are still available in this country, the opportunity to share with others and pass on the value lessons. These are all a part of being American. Somebody telling me, nobody telling you because of your happenstance of birth that you don't fit or you don't belong here or you can't do something. That's not value lesson when it comes to you that way, or nor is it the mentoring that you deserve and should receive to continue forward, keeping America strong and free.
Excellent. General, we're almost out of time, and we're so grateful, not only grateful for your being here, but we're grateful that you've been intentional with your life, that you've been able to live accordingly and are today an example for everyone to see how it's done. The 4 Ps you've lived out, but they apply to us. Do you have anything you'd like to share before we end our interview today?
Well, I think that among the adults listening, there are many youngsters out there that need mentoring. Unfortunately, all of our schools aren't producing the youngsters that they can and should be doing. There's a lot of variance. So don't let the opportunity go away. If you don't have somebody in your family, it might be a neighbor, it might be down the street. You got to be careful with your contact. But the youngsters out there, don't pass up the opportunity to pass on value lessons to them, because the youngsters are the future of our country.
General, thank you very much. From the Distinguished Flying Cross Society to South Dakota Public Broadcasting and all of us at Old Guys in Their Airplanes, you set the bar high, and your example makes us all want to achieve that too. General, thank you very much.
Thank you. Certainly, the old guy with the airplane has been one of my life's blessings, and so very pleased. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your steps forward today.
All right.
Stay safe.
Thank you, sir.
Normally, I would end the video with questions in regards to the video that we just saw, but I'm going to do things a little bit different this time. I just have something to say. I have so much love and respect for any person who serves their country. When I was younger, I signed up, but unfortunately wasn't able to go. I appreciate all that has served, and you get my highest respect. Thank you for your service, and I meant that from the bottom of my heart. Please share this video with anyone you deem necessary, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.